This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. We have a massive show coming up for you today. And let's get straight into it because we have finally heard from the President of the United States, Joe Biden, after announcing on social media that he's dropping out of the race. Now, despite reading from a teleprompter for 10 minutes with a spray tan, he didn't provide one reason as to why he's quitting now. But he did manage to gaslight the American people.
We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? Does character in public life still matter?
Honesty, democracy. Are you serious? This address was worse than what I was expecting, even from him. Why now, Joe Biden? And if you can't run again or even hold a press conference over something as significant as this, why the heck are you still in charge of the country right now? As you know, I'm happy to see Joe Biden step aside. I've been calling for it all year. But hearing Joe Biden say that he's doing this for democracy, we all know that's not true. He's been lying for years about his cognitive decline. So why bother being transparent about it now, hey? It's not like he has the most important job in the world to do, but we shouldn't worry about that. We should just let him soak up the last few months of power before retirement because Joe Biden, he really cares about you.
I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures.
Sure, we still don't know who's actually running America right now. It's certainly not him pulling all the strings. And seeing as Joe Biden will try to have you believe that he cares about democracy, just ask yourselves, how democratic is this process? That Kamala Harris looks almost set to become the Democrat nominee, even though not a single person voted for her. And Joe Biden was clearly pushed out as soon as he got COVID-19. And now we have the mainstream media doing their best to rewrite history as a campaign to get Kamala Harris elected. Just look at this story from Axios that's now pretending that Kamala Harris never actually had the title of border czar. Something that's not true. In fact, an Axios journalist reported that she was in 2021. This is what the article said. Kamala Harris was appointed by Biden as the border czar. So this is just one example of the media trying to cover up where Kamala Harris has failed Americans. Well, it only took 10 days of fake theory about a sloped roof and an embarrassing performance at a congressional hearing for the head of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, to resign after the attempted assassination on former President Donald Trump. Here she is only a couple of days ago trying her best to avoid admitting how significant this failure was.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question. Yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible...
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure? Yes or no?
Yes.
And you'd think being someone who's the head of the department that failed so badly should at least bother preparing for the hearing and provide some answers.
How long did you prepare for this hearing?
I've been preparing for this hearing over the weekend and into last week.
Okay, 5 days, 6 days?
As soon as I was notified
And how long was that?
about this hearing,
Okay, 4 days,
I began preparing.
4 days, 3 days?
I'm not sure the date that I got the letter asking me to be here.
What are you sure of?
Let's bring in comedian Alex Stein. Alex, great to see you. What a wild time in the US. What happens now? Are we in safe hands now that Kimberly Cheadle's gone?
No, we're not. And honestly, I want her to stay in her position because we have a lot of unanswered questions. And let's just be real. When you watch the clip, and I think Fox News edited it out, or maybe it just didn't make it in the super viral clip, but once they shot Trump, the Secret Service, when they piled on top of him, they said, what do we do? So yes, they have all kinds of strategies and game plans, but when a shooter actually shoots at the president, they don't know what to do. And I hate to just blame this on DEI, but when you have Kim Cheadle saying that 30% of the Secret Service should be women, but yet when you watch her walk into the halls of Congress to get sworn in and to testify, and you'll see her security detail is all men. So it's just a hypocrisy. I'm sorry if we're trying to protect the president, the biggest target, the 45th president, Donald Trump, we need the best people guarding him. And so this was just an error done on purpose. This was insubordination done on purpose, if you're asking me.
It's horrific. New footage shows local police officers and a Secret Service agent standing over the body of would-be Trump assassin Thomas Matthew Crooks, confirming that he was the person identified as suspicious. Here is that clip.
So this is the guy
yes, that they sent yes, Beaver County sniper scene and sent the pictures out. This is him.
Okay, all right.
Rifle's right there, obviously.
Got it. So the bike in the back, is he on that bike?
We don't know.
We don't know. So you're just treating that as suspicious device.
Okay, and then this is his bike with the stuff. And our sniper seen him walking away from that, I believe.
You know, Alex, I watched that and it's actually so hard to watch. A father was killed that day. Donald Trump nearly died. And this is what's being revealed. The Secret Service knew.
Gabriella, it's absolutely ridiculous. There's people that were drinking beers and drunk that noticed the shooter on top of the roof, and yet the Secret Service didn't act. And I don't know how the cops are in Australia, but I'll tell you, the cops here in America are pretty intense. They're pretty professional. And I've had traffic stops where I felt like I was in more professional hands than that Secret Service agent. I mean, he looked like a Keystone cop. He looked like a person that was impersonating a cop and not an actual cop. And it's just really scary, because if they can theoretically assassinate the president, then what hope do we have just being a normal citizen? So they could assassinate us theoretically. So no, I'm very, very, very frustrated. I'm very worried. And honestly, Donald Trump handled it like an absolute champion. He stuck his fist up. He said fight. He handled it so well.
Didn't he?
Well, I'm just saying, what they wanted to happen is they wanted to take out the president, and now it's done the exact opposite. It's rallied the country around Donald Trump.
Absolutely. I was just so inspired seeing Donald Trump in those moments after almost being killed. He just took a bullet, but he managed to find the strength and the courage to give his supporters exactly what they needed in that moment and tell them fight, fight, fight. What did you make of what Donald Trump had to say in his speech and actually when he reflected on almost being killed?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump handled it like a champ at the RNC. Some people kind of criticize Donald Trump for talking too long, but I've been to about 20 Donald Trump rallies, and that's what he likes to do. He's the greatest comedian. He's the greatest orator of our time. And, a bullet wound to his ear is not going to stop him from standing up there with no, security in his way for 2 hours. So Donald Trump's an absolute stud, in my opinion. And I know some people don't like him, but I don't know how you could dislike a guy that they shot in the ear and he stood back up and said, fight. So it doesn't matter if you're a lefty, if you're a righty. This guy is as American as it gets. And this is the other problem. This is what frustrates me. A lot of people have criticisms of Donald Trump. Are they valid? I don't know. But one thing that you cannot criticize Donald Trump about is that he loves America and he cares about this country.
100%.
And I don't know if that's the same for a lot of other politicians.
No, 100%. He doesn't need this job. He could be taking vacations like Joe Biden likes to do whenever he can. But hey, okay, your cat's back and featured.
I know,
featuring in Power Hour.
Get my cat, man.
Okay,
Get the cat. Sorry.
I want to talk to you about Joe Biden because we are pressed for time, unfortunately. He has just addressed the nation, of course, not in a press conference because that would be too hard for someone that's running America. But he did have this to say about stepping down.
Nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
We were just talking about Donald Trump being an actual hero. He actually got shot in the face and was managed to stand up and really rally his supporters. What is that? His fake tan.
He looks like a different person, doesn't he? He looks totally different. He looks
so
a little thinner. And let me just tell you this, and I don't want to spread any disinformation or misinformation, especially not on Sky News. But what I'm actually worried about is I wouldn't be surprised if they it sounds crazy, and I hope this is not true, but I speculate that they might let Joe Biden get sick, that they actually want him to have a catastrophic event so that they could gain support. Now, I'm not saying that's for sure going to happen, but if you look at his health, he's not doing well. He's probably hopped up on all kinds of medicine. And if they stopped giving him that medicine, very easily, I think he could pass away. So I want the president of the United States to step down, go to Delaware, go to his beach house and relax. Joe Biden, I don't like his politics, but he has done a lot of progressive stuff, being the first vice president with a black president, having the first female black vice president. He's done some monumental things in this world. He needs to retire, and his own party is now totally against him. So honestly, I'm starting to feel bad for Joe Biden, and I never would have thought that would be the case.
I agree with you. There's part of me that feels bad for him. The people around him let him continue to this point where they let him go up against Donald Trump knowing that he wouldn't be able to debate properly because he is in cognitive decline, something we've been saying for 2 years.
Yeah, this is nothing new, sadly. I mean, this is nothing new. Joe Biden won his entire campaign from his basement during the pandemic. And it's just really sad watching a man be the face of our country when our country's absolutely collapsing. And I don't know if we're going to get into it, but today is a crazy day. When Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to Congress, there was Palestinian protesters outside that took down the American flag and put up a Hamas flag. That scares me as an American citizen. We should have some respect for this country, and we should have police force that stop this radical Islamic terrorism. But I don't know if it's going to stop, Gabriella. I'm worried that there's going to be some sort of serious event, and if they don't hurt Joe Biden, they're going to hurt American citizens at one of these rallies or one of these protests, I have a feeling.
We have some vision from that protest. Let's just take a look. It's just disgusting. We keep seeing this time and time again. These anti-Israel protests erupting everywhere, and this time some demonstrators were burning the American flag. We also heard from protesters there. Some was chanting "Gays for Gaza." I know you've called this out before. Sadly, it keeps happening, so we're going to have to ask you to call it out again. Can I get your thoughts?
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu must have Jerry Seinfeld writing jokes for him, because he said that, gays for Gaza is like being chickens for KFC. It is totally hypocritical, and they would not be allowed to have any of those lifestyle choices in the Middle East. They don't have pride parades in the Middle East. And remember, they got pushed a little bit away from Washington, D.C., from the Capitol. Excuse me, they're in D.C. right here, but this is at Union Station. This is right next to it all. So this is happening in the nation's capital where you can see this. So it doesn't matter how many barriers they put up, doesn't matter how many law enforcement they call in from New York City. They still can't stop this radical Islam. And I'm not trying to scare people, but I just really am devastated and heartbroken seeing our country divided like this and humiliated on a national global stage, coming on your network and being embarrassed for a country that I love so much.
It's happening here in Australia as well. It's happening in other parts of the world. But thank you for speaking out about it. I want to talk to you about Kamala Harris. She's targeting Gen Z voters. Here she is.
This is going to be a humbling thing I'm about to share with you. If someone is 18 years old today, they were born in 2005. I love Gen Z. I love Gen Z. It will be a humbling moment for some of us to realize that anyone who is 18 now was born in 2005. I love Gen Z. I love Gen Z. So think about this. Okay, first of all, it's going to be humbling for many of us when you remember or realize that someone who is 18 now was born in 2005. I have to tell you, I love Gen Z. Yes, I know, but I love Gen Z. And it will be a humbling fact to many of us when we realize that anyone who is 18 today, they were born in 2005.
Surely Gen Z voters just find that so annoying.
Well, of course. And I hate to I hate that I keep using the word sadly, but it's not surprising that one of these liberal politicians is obsessed with young people. You got Joe Biden sniffing every kid's hair. You have Kamala Harris trying to cringe, appease the Gen Z. Gen Z doesn't care about Kamala Harris. Gen Z is tired of all this political propaganda, and they've been going through it even harder, having the pandemic and their whole high school career taken from them. So I have a lot of empathy for Gen Z, and they're definitely sick of it. Now, will Kamala win? The only way she beats Donald Trump is if they cheat, because this country, for whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, the majority of people respect him and like him more than Kamala Harris. And she wouldn't be where she is today if she didn't have a relationship with the mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown, that basically put her as the attorney general. And then when she became the attorney general, she put in the 3 strikes rule that actually locked up people for life, since they had 2 previous felonies. If they would even get a small misdemeanor, they would get life sentences. So she's an evil person that helped the private prison industry gain tons of money. She does not care about the Black community that she tries to appease to. She does not care about the Gen Z community that she tries to appease. She doesn't even have children. And, a lot of people that don't have children, I'm not faulting her for that. I'm just saying, Drew Barrymore tried to call her Momala. She's not even a mom. She doesn't even know how to be a mom. So I don't think that she can run this country, sadly.
What do you think is going to happen in August? Do you think she will become the Democratic nominee?
Well, they didn't elect her, but I think I think they're going to make Joe Biden step down. I think the people on the left, Joe Biden loves the Senate. He spent the majority of his life as a senator. And if you have Chuck Schumer speaking out against Joe Biden, I think he's going to go with whatever the party tells him. And listen, Barack Obama made a statement, and they said that they have not endorsed Kamala Harris yet because the rumor is that they don't think that she can beat Donald Trump. And I think they're right. So I think what the game plan, and this is just pure speculation, and I've been wrong before, but I think they make Joe Biden step down, or he has a medical emergency. God bless his soul, I hope does not happen. And then she gets to be the president for a month, and that will help her on the campaign trail with just, strategy and game planning using Air Force One. So I have no doubt in my mind. Also, this is the big conspiracy, is that they want to put her in as president, so all the Trump 47 merch is a waste, and then Trump would have to make new Trump 48 merch. So I wouldn't be surprised.
These people
yeah, they'll try whatever gimmick or scam that they can. So I do believe we're going to have a President Kamala Harris unelected very soon.
Finally, Hollywood heavyweight actor George Clooney has expressed his support for Kamala Harris. Of course he has. That comes as no surprise. You've called him a fraud on this program before. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I mean, George Clooney, all these Hollywood elites, they all loved Donald Trump before he was president. All the rappers rapped about him in their songs. George Clooney thinks that Donald Trump is a better candidate, but he's trying to appease the woke left, and he knows that Hollywood is a liberal mecca. So he's just doing this to placate and virtue signal the American people. But George Clooney is an actor. If you're an actor, you're fake, you're a fraud. And that's no disrespect to any thespians. I like to act, but he's a professional fraudster. He plays different people on the screen. So he can put on any sort of chameleon, any sort of camouflage. And now he's on the left. And, now he's supporting Kamala Harris, yet he just raised $20 million for Joe Biden like a month ago. So these people have no integrity.
Alex Stein, so great to speak with you. Thank you for joining us on Power Hour. Chat to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you for having me.
I was hoping we'd be able to bring you some positive developments as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addresses Congress, but that has been overshadowed by the horrific and violent anti-Israel protests that have erupted in Washington, D.C. Some demonstrators were spotted carrying the Hamas flag. Others were heard shouting Allah Akbar. And that's not all. Protesters lit the American flag on fire and vandalised a statue with the words Hamas is coming. Benjamin Netanyahu used his address to mock the protesters.
When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots. And some of these protesters hold up signs proclaiming gays for Gaza, they might as well hold up signs saying chickens for KFC.
Joining us now is Joel Burney from the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council. Joel, great to speak with you. Thank you for joining us. I wish that this was the first time that we were seeing the protests like this erupt. In fact, I wish we were not seeing them at all. But can we get your reaction to what's happening in Washington, DC?
Well, what you've seen, Gabriella, over the past couple of hours has been a terrible escalation in violence on the streets of Washington, DC. Now, this is just a culmination of what's been going on in Western democratic societies ever since October 7. This very vocal minority, this rabid crowd of a mixture of those from the Muslim community and then those beefed up by the socialist left community, have taken it upon themselves to disrupt all life in all of these places, not just isolated in the United States, in Canada, the streets of Toronto, in the United Kingdom, in the streets of London and other cities as well, in Paris, in France, but also here locally in Australia. We've seen an unrelenting disruption of daily life to Australians, where the focal point is this very, very vicious and violent protest movement.
What did you make of what Benjamin Netanyahu had to say?
So I think he said a lot. He had a long speech. And what I will point out is that there's a lot of media reporting about the protests outside, the protests inside, and the handful of Democratic Congress people that boycotted the session. But what I will say is this. Firstly, this was an invitation by the Speaker of the House to Prime Minister Netanyahu, which he accepted. Prime Minister Netanyahu has addressed Congress before, and he's one of the leaders that's addressed Congress the most in his time and his tenure. So I think it's important to note that the significant majority of both houses of Congress were steadfastly behind Netanyahu, the State of Israel, and also what he had to say today. So I think that should not be missed in all of the whitewashing of this, of the reporting. Yes, Democrats boycotted. Yes, Rashida Tlaib decided that she would be, tried to dramatize it and take the spotlight away from him. But I do think it is important to reiterate that the alliance between the two is very strong. It has had challenges over the past couple of weeks and months, and may go through more challenges indeed in the future leading up to the general election. But from what I saw in the number of standing ovations that he received, there's no doubt that there is significant support for Benjamin Netanyahu, but most importantly, the State of Israel.
Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet Joe Biden on Thursday, Donald Trump on Friday. Can you talk to us about how important the US election is in terms of its relationship with Israel?
So I think he's also meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris on Thursday, which I think is critically important. Now, I do note that she was not in the chamber during the speech a couple of hours ago. Some have interpreted that as a slight against Prime Minister Netanyahu, but I'll allow everyone else to come to their conclusions. He is going to meet with her and with President Biden. So before I get on to Trump, just a quick word about what we can expect if there is a smooth transition from President Biden to Vice President Kamala Harris as the presumptive nominee. President Biden has had a decades-long association and relationship with the State of Israel. It is very, very strong. It is rather unwavering. And he, on a personal level, as well as one of the longest-serving senators and also public figures in American political history, he has a very, very personal and strong connection to the State of Israel. Kamala Harris's connection is less than that of President Biden. And I do believe that will play a role. Now, whether minor or major, I don't know, and only time will tell. My assumption is that she will try and toe the line of the previous 3.5 years of the administration, and you won't see a massive departure on policy vis-a-vis Israel. However, I do have my concerns that the lacking of that personal investment that President Biden has with Israel, and that historical connection that he has, and the fact that Vice President Harris's connection is not that strong, I do have concerns that if there is going to be a slight departure, that departure is going to be against Israel as opposed to in favor of Israel. The importance of the Trump meeting is obvious. The polls show that he's in a very strong position coming up to November. and he's had a pre-existing relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu before. Now, we will all remember how close they were when they were in office together. There was some straining of the relationship during the past 3.5 years of the Biden administration for a few different issues. But ultimately, the fact that Trump will be meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu is a good sign. And let's not forget that one of the largest achievements in American foreign policy history, at least since the turn of the century, was the Abraham Accords. And that Abraham Accords brought normalization and peace between Israel and a handful of Arab countries, namely Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, and Sudan. Now, we cannot underestimate the importance of such alliances, and I think that Netanyahu touched on this during his speech. The hope is that any presidency, whether or not that's President Harris or President Trump, will use the Abraham Accords as a foundation to what can grow in the region to create a much safer environment for what's going on there. An Israel-Arab alliance that takes the nefarious actors, namely Iran and the regime and its proxies, and makes sure that united, they can all fight the struggle together. And there was evidence of that clearly on April the 14th, when Iran launched a barrage of cruise and ballistic missiles and attack drones into Israel. And they weren't just intercepted by Israel, the UK, and the United States. They were also intercepted with the assistance of Saudi Arabia and Jordan as well. So we're looking at a whole new potential for a regional stability agreement. And President Trump was able to do that with the Abraham Accords before. And the hope with Israel is that he'll be able to build on that in the future.
It's so important that we factor that in as we look at the US election. Benjamin Netanyahu has indicated that negotiations with Hamas may be improving over a potential hostage release and ceasefire deal. What's the latest?
So there's significant chatter over the past couple of weeks. There's been a lot of teams going here, there, from Israel to Doha, back to Cairo, and there's significant negotiations happening behind the scenes. My estimation is, and my hope is that we are inching closer to an agreement. There are a few very important sticking points. The patrol of the Egypt-Gaza border, where the majority of arms were smuggled, the ability of Israel to maintain security control and protection of its citizens, and also the amount of Palestinian prisoners who will be released in return for the Israeli hostages. So these are the things that are being ironed out now. There's no doubt within the Israeli politic there is a majority view that supports the hostage release deal. I will note that the Prime Minister works within a quirky system of government, which is unicameral and elected by proportional representation, which means that he has multiple coalition partners, which he has to balance and manage in terms of not just his agenda vis-a-vis the war, but his agenda overall. So whilst these moving parts keep moving, my hope is that there is progress towards it. The final thing that I'll say is that if President Biden is going to stay in power, which looks like he will until November, or until January, until the handover, it will be an important part of his legacy to get a win on the foreign policy stage. And if he is able to assist in getting a negotiated truce between Hamas and Israel for the release of the hostages, I think that he can consider that to be a bit of a win and to etch that into the end of his legacy as he's walking out the door.
While these negotiations are taking place, families in northern communities in Israel that were forced to evacuate because of the war have been told that they're not able to return to school in their hometowns when school gets underway in September. And that is the reality for tens of thousands of families, isn't it?
Gabriella, you raise such an important point, and unfortunately this is one of the very important stories that is missed with all the fog of war that we've been reporting since October 7. And there is, since Hezbollah started its launch of rockets and drone attacks in the north on October 8, the day after Hamas launched its genocidal attack into southern Israel, about 75 to 90,000 residents of the north, a 5-kilometre buffer zone between Lebanon and Israel, have been evacuated from their homes. And they've been living in temporary accommodation in hotels ever since the 8th of October. So the news that they will not be able to, well, the school kids will not be able to return for the new school year that starts in September is very sad and very troubling. So there's a number of people that are displaced, and there's no view on the horizon as to when they can return. So the significant impact that it has on these people's lives, they've not only lost the ability to be in their homes, but the destruction in the towns in the north has been quite terrible. So some towns, at least 50% of the buildings have been damaged by the rocket fire, the daily rocket fire and the drone attacks coming from Hezbollah in the north. And essentially, and unfortunately, due to this conflict, certainly in the north, Israel is shrinking, and Israel has shrunk its territory by about 5 kilometers from October 8 until today. And that's obviously an untenable situation for Israel to maintain for the long term. So I think that it will impact the psyche of not just those residents who are displaced, but those in the whole country about the despair of the families unable to return. But it will exert certain pressures on the government to look to a different solution to the northern situation than they currently have on the table. And that could be the one of two things: either a diplomatic resolution with the assistance of the United States and others to get Hezbollah fighters to remove themselves from southern Lebanon and to retreat to the Litani River, which is part of a UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which ended the Second Lebanon War in 2006. Or the unfortunate other alternative is if a diplomatic avenue cannot be reached, then I do expect that the potential for a war in the north between Israel and Hezbollah is increasing in probability as the days go on.
It is just so heartbreaking to hear what the people of Israel are going through and then seeing acts of anti-Semitism just displayed right around the world. Joel Burney, thank you so much for speaking to us here on Power Hour.
Thank you, Gabriella. Always a pleasure.
Joining us now is Peter Hassan, editor at Washington Free Beacon. Peter, thank you for joining us. What did you make of Joe Biden's address today?
Yeah, so Joe Biden's speech tonight can really be seen as the closing act of the Biden cover-up, because he didn't acknowledge that his health is worse than he's portrayed it to be. He didn't really give any kind of reason for why he's stepping down now. And then he said, well, he's doing it for democracy, but really, if he were doing it for democracy, he would have done this 2 years ago. So the party could have had an open primary and, the voters could have gotten their say, which obviously is the complete opposite of what happened here. And so really, it was a low bar, and I'm sure, the usual suspects on CNN are going to come out and say it was a historically excellent speech.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Which really just, is part of that same cover-up of people, of Biden and the media kind of insulting the intelligence of the average American.
Absolutely. Joe Biden also lied about the crisis at the southern border. This is what he had to say.
The violent crime rate is at a 50-year low. We're also securing our border. Border crossings are lower today than when the previous administration left office.
Okay, maybe today, that's right, there was a low number, but that's after the fact that 10 million illegal immigrants have entered the US under his administration.
Yeah, and on top of that, he also cited a stat about violent crime, but actually a lot of that goes to kind of the FBI has changed how it reporting methods, and so they really have kind of a shortcoming on the data front. So I wouldn't put too much faith in that. But then on the border, it's I think it's pretty telling that he's trying to rewrite reality here, when I think in every state in the country, people can see what the border crisis is like, because the border crisis is being bussed into their neighborhoods and into their school gymnasiums. And so the whole Biden theme for the last 3.5 years has been telling people not to believe what they can see. Don't believe that he's unfit for office, even though you can watch him talking to dead people. And here he's saying, take my word for it, the country is safe and the border is secure. But it's not the kind of thing that stands up to more than 2 seconds of scrutiny there.
Let's look at Kamala Harris, who's been hitting the ground running campaigning after securing enough support from Democratic delegates to become the party's nominee, although at this stage that's not guaranteed. But there is a good chance that she'll be going up against Donald Trump in November. So here are the top 5 things I've put together about what we need to know about Kamala Harris. And Peter, I'd love to get your thoughts about what I've missed in a moment, but let's look at what she did in 2021. She went on television to throw her support behind a move to defund the police.
Right now, what we're seeing in America is many cities spend over 1/3 of their entire city budget on policing. But meanwhile, we've been defunding public schools for years in America. We've got to re-examine what we're doing with American taxpayer dollars.
That grab was from 2020, but she also raised bail money for Black Lives Matter activists. Some of those that she helped release went on to commit further crimes, including murder. Now, what is Kamala Harris like to work for? Well, 92% of her staff left in the first 3 years as vice president. So what does that tell you about her ability to lead? Also in 2020, her campaign was such a mess that she dropped out before voting day. But of course, this time around, she's close to becoming the Democrat nominee without earning a single vote from the public. And of course, she was part of the cover-up where she repeatedly told the American people that there is nothing to worry about when it comes to Joe Biden's mental fitness.
And in Joe Biden, we have a president who is probably one of the boldest and strongest American presidents we have had in his response to the needs of the American people.
But he is an extraordinary leader, and I wish that people could see what I see, because there's only one person who sits behind that resolute desk.
So the way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated.
Thank God our president is in good shape, in good health, and is ready to lead in our second term.
Peter, what did I miss? What concerns you about Kamala Harris?
Well, one thing that she is going to face a lot more scrutiny on is really her own political record, because during the Biden era, she's really kind of been able to draft behind him. And the fact that she supports far left policies has kind of been moderated by the fact that as the VP, she isn't making policy. But now all of that's about to, get right back into the spotlight. And the last time her shortcomings were, facing as much scrutiny as they're going to be, she dropped out before Iowa. Was pulling below Andrew Yang. And so she really does not have a good track record anytime she has to stand on her own 2 feet. And so she really has gotten pushed into embracing a lot of these slogans from the activist base, whether it's the Green New Deal or abolishing ICE or decriminalizing border crossings. A lot of this stuff is really going to come to the forefront. She's going to have to defend it to a general population after not being able to do a good job of defending it to her own voters in 2019 and 2020. And so she really is going to be, she's kind of in the honeymoon phase right now, but she's going to come under the microscope, and she's going to have some answers for why she believes these things, or she's going to have to, blatantly flip-flop and say she doesn't want to abolish ICE or implement the Green New Deal. And a lot of this really goes to kind of, one of her core weaknesses is people don't trust her. And I think, it's not hard to see why when the voters can see Biden, clearly in a mentally infirm state, and she comes out and tells them that actually Joe Biden behind closed doors is doing cartwheels and solving Rubik's cubes with one hand, and so it really kind of goes to the core issue of, can you trust Kamala Harris? And Kamala Harris says Joe Biden's fine. 80% of Americans say he's not, and so these are really the issues that she's going to have to explain
Well,
even as sympathetic to the media coverage has been, she's still going to have a tough time.
Let's have a look at the media coverage of Kamala Harris. Here it is.
I was blown away. I was like, I kind of fell in love with her. I just thought it was a great, great opening act.
That is fighting Kamala Harris. She is coming out guns blazing.
I'm jumping out of my seat over here watching this. I think people have been thirsting for this.
She looked completely comfortable tonight with the words she was speaking. They felt organic and genuine. I think every Democrat should be heartened by that speech. I think that if I'm the Trump campaign, I think the message is very clear. The game is on here, and it's not going to be easy.
It's no wonder people aren't watching CNN anymore. But let's finally look at the polling. Kamala Harris holds a slim lead over Republican presidential challenger Donald Trump following President Joe Biden's decision to abandon his re-election bid. So the Reuters Ipsos survey found that Kamala Harris is leading Donald Trump by 2%. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock in that at the moment because, she really has been kind of drafting behind Biden. And so I think, there was always going to be this initial bump when people realized that, unlike Joe Biden, she can put two sentences together. But really, when push comes to shove and people start looking into kind of what she believes, what she says, and the policies she would implement, the people she would put into power. I think we're going to see those numbers come much farther down.
Okay.
Especially because it's not like she's at like a 52-48. It's a low enough number that she really doesn't have even half the country committed to backing her. So I think she's in a very vulnerable state that is going to really be tested as the campaign kicks into gear.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Peter Hassan, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Thank you so much for having me.
The 2024 Paris Olympic Games will begin on Friday, but one royal's dreams of returning to the Olympics are officially over. Riley Sullivan is a reporter here at skynews.com.au and he is always across the latest headlines from the royal family. Riley, great to see you.
Great to see you.
The royal family's very own Olympian Zara Tindall has sadly failed to make the 2024 Olympic squad for Great Britain as an equestrian. What Zara had to say?
Yeah, it was sad news for Zara. She is a silver medal winning Olympian. She won silver at the 2012 London Games, and she was hoping to sort of return to the Olympics and take another run at gold in Paris. Unfortunately, she's come up short. Zara competes in the equestrian in a sport called eventing, which is like a 3-day activity. It's very strenuous. It's the elite of equestrian riding, and unfortunately she's missed out. But even though Zara won't be there will be a big royal presence. Of course, Princess Anne is president of the British Olympic Association. She's also on the IOC committee. So we'll be seeing a lot of Princess Anne over the coming weeks. And yeah, unfortunate news for Zara, but unfortunately that's the way it goes.
Yeah, that is unfortunate news for Zara, but I'm looking forward to watching the Olympics.
Me too.
We do have some Meghan Markle news because, of course, she's thrilled by the news that Kamala Harris is now the presumptive Democratic nominee for president. Will we see Meghan officially endorse Kamala? And could the Duchess be considering a career in politics? Oh, my goodness. Of course she probably is.
Yeah, that's right. So Meghan's reportedly very happy about Kamala being the nominee for the Democratic presidential, candidate. She will likely come out, I think, and formally endorse Kamala. During the previous election cycle, Meghan and Harry dipped their toe in politics, subtly encouraging Americans to vote and also subtly endorsing the Democratic Party. We know that Meghan is more of a Democrat herself. And I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't use this as an opportunity to build up her platform in Washington, D.C. There's been a lot of speculation over the years that Meghan is, interested in a career in politics. And it first came up last year, actually, when the senator from California, Dianne Feinstein, passed away, and there was a Senate vacancy. And there was, speculation, as I'm sure you remember, that Gavin Newsom would give that Senate vacancy to Meghan. So, she's certainly on the cards. That ultimately didn't happen, but it was thought at that time that she did meet with a lot of top Democrats, and she's sort of building that network. So whether that means, a ceremonial role for her, perhaps as some kind of ambassador down the line. I don't know if she would take a run at the presidency or a Senate seat, but I'm sure that she's not ruling it out.
I don't think a Meghan Markle endorsement is really going to help Kamala Harris, but it was interesting. I was listening to some of the coverage of Kamala Harris and people were describing her as the Meghan Markle of American politics because she's so unpopular.
Oh, God.
There we go. So we'll see if she's going to formally endorse Kamala Harris. Now, the former chair of Prince Harry's Invictus Games Foundation has officially left the organisation weeks after the Pat Tillman Award debacle. What did Harry have to say about the resignation and the future of Invictus?
Well, the timing of this was quite unfortunate. Dominic Reid, who's been the chair of Invictus really since its inception 10 years ago, he's stepped down. He formally resigned last week. And it was a positive, it wasn't a negative thing. I don't think that it was spurred by the timing of the Pat Tillman Award debacle, but it is unfortunate timing because it does, beg the question, did that spur him on to do it? He was very, congratulated Harry in his resignation. He said it was the right time to go, and vice versa. Harry's come out, he congratulated and thanked his friend Dominic for 10 years of service. As far as what this means for Invictus, who knows? We know that Harry has recently announced that the Invictus Games will be coming to Birmingham in the UK in a few years. So certainly, the Games and this initiative is going to continue to grow, and I think it is Harry's signature cause. But in terms of a new chair, it's unclear really where in the immediate term it'll go.
Okay, and Princess Catherine's family are reportedly furious with her uncle, Gary Goldsmith, after he publicly spoke out about Kate's cancer diagnosis. Tell us a bit more about Gary Goldsmith and why has Carol Middleton finally put her foot down?
Well, this Gary Goldsmith, he's quite a character.
Isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's a self-made IT millionaire. He's had a very colourful life himself, and he is the younger brother of Kate's mum, Carol. He did raise eyebrows in the Middleton family, and I'm sure at Buckingham Palace earlier this year when he decided to go on Celebrity Big Brother. And this is a problem for the Middletons because, ever since Kate met William 20 years ago, they married in 2011, the Middleton family have always been praised for their discretion. They're a highly close-knit family and they're highly respectful of Kate and Will's privacy and of the monarchy's privacy. So when Gary went on Celebrity Big Brother, that was a problem for Carol, and allegedly she's iced him out and he's actually left the UK. He's now living in Spain for the time being because apparently he's just persona non grata with his family over that move.
Okay, Riley Sullivan, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Always.
That's it for Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.